Cassia Mercier stood in the gleaming, sterile lab of Sunspire Academy, surrounded by the hum of advanced medical equipment and the faint scent of sterilizing agents. Her sleek, dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, her focus unwavering as she adjusted the microscope in front of her. The white lab coat she wore was immaculate. She was on the edge of a breakthrough. But that wasn't enough. Cassia needed more. For as long as she could remember, Cassia had been obsessed with the idea of human resilience. Growing up in a family of renowned scientists, her home had always been filled with discussions of biology, genetics, and human potential. But it wasn't enough to simply admire humanity's ability to survive. She wanted to control it. The human body, with all its flaws and weaknesses, had a secret, a regenerative capability that defied logic, that could be manipulated and perfected. Cassia was determined to unlock this power. The floating archipelago of Aspen's Reach, home to Sunspire Academy, was where the best and brightest minds in the galaxy gathered to study the greatest mysteries of life. Towering cliffs rose high into the mist, where the Academy sat, its sleek buildings connected by graceful walkways. Below, the ocean stretched endlessly, its waters shimmering with a strange natural energy that Cassia often theorized could be harnessed for medical advancements. She had dedicated herself to this very pursuit, diving deep into the biology of the human body, hoping to one day offer humanity the ability to regenerate even from the most catastrophic injuries. The Academy's focus on bioengineering, combined with its political influence, meant that Cassia's work could be groundbreaking. Her project had focused on the regenerative cells that made human bodies so resilient. Cells could regenerate after a scrape, after a break, even after major organ damage, but only within limits. Cassia theorized that these limitations were simply boundaries that humanity had yet to understand. The body had an emergency system, a hidden ability to push regeneration past its normal limits. What if she could unlock that system? What if the limits didn't need to exist at all? Cassia had been working for weeks on modifying human stem cells to see if she could trigger regeneration in areas of the body that would typically be beyond repair. Most medical science in the galaxy had long moved past the need for traditional medicine, but Cassia's research ventured into the uncharted, where old paradigms could be upended. Her lab was a blend of futuristic technology and pure scientific ambition, filled with holograms of human organs, cellular structures, and advanced biochemical charts that only the most gifted students at Sunspire could fully appreciate. The day she discovered something extraordinary began like any other. Cassia had just finished running a batch of genetic modifications on a sample of human cells when something unusual appeared on the monitor. The cells, which she had manipulated to enhance their regenerative properties, didn't just show the expected results. They began regenerating at an unprecedented rate, far faster than the standard process could account for. These cells, what she had thought would merely exhibit enhanced healing, began to regenerate after simulated trauma. She was staring at a map of biological activity that no one had ever observed before. Her heart raced as she combed through the data. No existing science could explain this. The regenerative cells weren't just healing, they were repairing beyond what the human body had ever been known to do. This was beyond the cell's natural capabilities. Was there some hidden, latent potential in human biology that had never been explored? It was as if the cells knew how to fix themselves before they even began to break down. This was more than she could have ever hoped for. If she could harness this, humanity would never need to fear death or injury again. She could bring the ultimate gift to the galaxy. But there was also the nagging thought, what would this power do to those who didn't control it? What if it spiraled out of control? What if it was dangerous? Cassia pushed those thoughts aside for now. She had to test it. And so, she brought in Ryan Voss. Ryan, a combat medic who had trained alongside Cassia during their first year at Sunspire, was more than a colleague, he was her closest friend. The kind of person who could perform a medical procedure with steady hands, even under extreme pressure. Ryan was all about efficiency, keeping things practical and grounded, unlike Cassia, who dreamed of reshaping human biology itself. Cassia had always felt that Ryan saw her as a bit of a dreamer, too focused on theories, too ambitious for his taste. Today, however, Ryan was going to help her test the next phase of her experiment. They had agreed to conduct a routine practice session where Cassia would demonstrate a new technique in bioregeneration. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than a standard drill. Then, as if by fate, something went wrong. Cassia's equipment malfunctioned, sending a shard of glass from a broken vial straight into her arm. It cut deep, and blood immediately began to spill across the floor. Ryan's face paled as he looked at the wound. "Cassia, this is bad. We need to get you to the medbay, now." Cassia's vision blurred as pain shot through her arm. But then, something strange happened. As the blood continued to pour from the wound, her arm began to twitch. She could feel it. The cells inside her were shifting, reacting, regenerating at a rapid pace. In mere moments, the bleeding stopped. The pain receded. Within seconds, the deep cut on her arm closed, skin knitting itself back together, far faster than any known human healing process. Ryan stared at her in disbelief. "What the hell just happened?" he whispered, his voice low, the panic barely contained beneath his breath. Cassia looked at her arm. It was completely healed, as if nothing had ever happened. She should have been in agony, her body in shock from the injury. Instead, she was standing there, perfectly fine, as though the injury never existed. This wasn't supposed to happen," Cassia murmured. Her heart pounded, the weight of the discovery settling into her mind. She had unlocked something inside her own body, something that defied everything she thought she knew. This wasn't just a theoretical concept anymore. It was real, and it was something she had to understand. To control. As Ryan stood there, still in shock, Cassia's mind raced. What did this mean? What had she just uncovered? And more importantly, what would happen if she pushed this discovery further? Cassia's journey had just begun, but now it was clear that this was only the beginning of something far larger, something that could change the very nature of humanity itself. Cassia Mercier's unexpected recovery spread like wildfire throughout Sunspire Academy. It didn't take long before whispers of her miraculous healing reached the highest echelons of the institution. It was the talk of every classroom, every hallway, and every cafeteria. The Academy's biotechnical community was abuzz, but with growing tension. Everyone wanted answers. Was this some new medical breakthrough, or was it a terrifying anomaly? The board of directors, those untouchable figures who controlled the Academy's research funding and its future, quickly took notice. They summoned Cassia to an emergency meeting, demanding answers. Cassia arrived in their opulent, glass-walled conference room, feeling the weight of her discovery pressing down on her chest. She had prepared herself to explain her research, to defend it, but as soon as she stepped inside, she realized things were not going as she had hoped. Director Lenara Orlin, the stern and calculating leader of the board, sat at the head of the table. Her icy gaze didn't waver as she looked Cassia over. "Miss Mercier, you are well aware of the implications of your recovery," she began, her voice clipped and controlled. "This is no longer just a scientific discovery. This is a matter of security. We cannot allow this to continue without a full investigation." Cassia blinked, unsure of where the conversation was headed. "I don't understand." "I just don't misunderstand us, Cassia. We recognize the potential of your work, but do you not see the danger? If your research is allowed to progress, if others can replicate this ability, it would be an uncontrolled power, a force that could reshape the very fabric of human life itself. It could be weaponized." Cassia felt a chill run down her spine. The idea of her research being used as a weapon, something she had never considered before, was like a punch to the gut. This wasn't why she had sought to understand human biology. She wanted to heal, to save lives, not to create something that could tear them apart. Before she could respond, Director Orlin continued, her voice growing more insistent. "We are placing your research under quarantine, effective immediately. No one is to access the data without our authorization." Cassia stood there, stunned. "You're stopping my research?" she asked, incredulous. She had never expected this. "But I've just scratched the surface. I don't even know all the implications yet." "I need to continue. We need to understand what you've uncovered," Orlin countered coldly. "But we need to do so cautiously. This is too powerful to be handled recklessly." The board had made their decision. And it was final. Cassia's breakthrough was no longer her own. It belonged to the Academy, to the board, and now it was trapped behind layers of bureaucratic red tape. But the shutdown of her research was just the beginning. As Cassia sat in the sterile silence of her dormitory later that evening, she couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. She had thought her discovery was a gift, but now it seemed like a curse. Humanity wasn't ready for something like this. The fact that they had to hide it away, quarantine it, it felt wrong. What if her body wasn't just healing on its own? What if it was responding to something else? Something she hadn't fully grasped? She turned back to her data, which she had managed to secure before the quarantine was enforced. As she pored over the genetic anomalies in her own cells, she began to uncover unsettling patterns. It wasn't just the regenerative abilities that had changed her body, it was as if something else was guiding it. The cells were reacting to extreme trauma as if they were being directed. The more she analyzed, the more she found herself diving deeper into the complexity of it all. It was when she traced the anomalies back to certain sequences within her DNA that things truly began to spiral. These weren't random mutations. This wasn't just some bizarre quirk of biology. The human body's healing process, the one she had long studied, had a hidden trigger. Something was manipulating it. It wasn't just a natural response, it was a deliberate ability, one that activated only under the most extreme circumstances. As her mind raced through the possibilities, she found something that chilled her to the bone. There were signs of intervention, almost like a force controlling the regeneration. This wasn't the result of natural evolution, nor was it something that could be explained by current medical understanding. The body was being pushed to regenerate in ways that weren't normal, unnatural even. And as Cassia dove deeper into the genetic sequence, she realized the implications were far greater than she had ever imagined. But she couldn't stop there. She had to know more. Her obsession with the truth was quickly becoming an addiction. The more she unraveled, the more the pieces didn't fit. As her heart raced with anticipation, Cassia made a decision. She had to dig even deeper into the Academy's records. There had to be something they were hiding. And if the board was this intent on locking her research away, they must have known more than they were letting on. Late into the night, Cassia bypassed security protocols on the Academy's servers, using her medical student clearance to access files she wasn't supposed to. Her hands trembled as she uncovered encrypted records files that had been buried for years, long before she had even stepped foot in Sunspire Academy. These documents told the story of a top-secret project initiated by the Academy's founders, one that involved the manipulation of human biology on an unimaginable scale. The goal had been to create a new breed of humans, enhanced, perfected, and biologically superior. The realization hit her like a slap. Her healing ability wasn't an isolated incident. She wasn't the first. The experiments had been started long ago. Her regenerative abilities, the same ones she had thought were unique to her, were part of a larger pattern, an ancient attempt to control human biology, one that stretched far beyond her own research. And as Cassia continued to pore over the records, her suspicions grew darker. What if she was nothing more than a byproduct of those forgotten experiments? What if the force that had triggered her healing abilities was not an accident, but something far more dangerous, a legacy of genetic engineering, designed to create a weaponized species? Meanwhile, her relationship with Ryan was beginning to fray. Ryan, who had once stood by her side as a steadfast ally, was pulling away. He no longer supported her drive to push the boundaries of human biology. His past, his own history with medical experiments gone wrong, had come back to haunt him. His fears were growing, and the look in his eyes whenever he saw her now was filled with worry, not admiration. "Cassia, you don't understand what you're playing with," Ryan had said quietly after their last conversation. "You're pushing things too far. If this ability is really what I think it is, it's not just dangerous. It could destroy everything. We don't control life and death." Her own heart ached as she listened to his words, but deep down, she knew he was right. Her discovery, her gift or curse, was far too powerful to ignore. And as the weight of her newfound knowledge began to suffocate her, Cassia was faced with an impossible question. Was this regeneration a blessing or a dark legacy that humanity was never meant to embrace? The truth struck Cassia like a lightning bolt. As she painstakingly sifted through the hidden archives, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. The regenerative abilities were not just an anomaly, a random accident of biology. No, they were part of something much larger, an ancient, deliberate manipulation of human evolution itself. The founder's records she had uncovered told a story that stretched back centuries, to the very dawn of Sunspire Academy. In those early days, the Academy had been more than a prestigious research institution. It had been the site of a secret experiment, a collaboration with an advanced alien species that sought to guide humanity's ascension. But these extraterrestrial partners had not been mere benefactors. They had a purpose: to create a species capable of transcending the boundaries of life and death, a species that could surpass even their creators. The aliens had manipulated the human genome, introducing dormant genetic sequences that could be activated under extreme conditions. These sequences, when triggered, would unlock regenerative abilities far beyond anything previously known. Strength, resilience, healing, these were not just biological quirks. They were a part of a larger, more calculated design, and the Academy's founders had kept this secret buried for generations. Cassia's body, her own miraculous recovery, wasn't just a fluke. She was a living testament to the alien influence, a byproduct of a project that had been abandoned, hidden away, and forgotten. And now, that forgotten experiment was waking up. She stood in the dimly lit lab, staring at the files on her terminal, her mind racing. The implications of what she had learned were enormous. The Academy, the board, and even Ryan, all of them had been unaware of the truth. And now, the very powers they had sought to control were slipping beyond their reach. They had no idea what she was about to unleash. In that moment, Cassia made a choice that would change everything. Her heart pounded in her chest as she took a deep breath and activated the procedure. The serum she had synthesized, based on the alien blueprints buried in the Academy's archives, was a gamble. It was designed to activate the dormant sequences within her cells, pushing her biology beyond its natural limits. The result could be catastrophic. It could tear her apart, or, if it worked, it could unlock the full potential of humanity's evolution. As the serum entered her bloodstream, she felt a surge of energy unlike anything she had ever experienced. It began slowly, a subtle warmth spreading through her veins, but soon it escalated, sending waves of power coursing through her body. Her muscles tightened, her bones began to shift, and her mind exploded with visions of a future she had never anticipated. Humanity, she saw, was on the cusp of something extraordinary. But that future was a double-edged sword. In one vision, humanity had ascended to a new era. They were no longer bound by the limitations of their biology, and they had forged alliances with other species across the galaxy, becoming a dominant force. The potential was overwhelming. Humanity could conquer the stars, reshape reality itself, and become something far greater than they had ever imagined. But in another vision, Cassia saw a darker future. Humanity's ascent came at a great cost. Their evolution, accelerated by the alien influence, had twisted them. Their powers had turned against them, breeding violence, tyranny, and chaos. The once hopeful species had become cold, calculating, and merciless, ruling over the galaxy with an iron fist. The very abilities that had once been their gift had become their curse. Her body was racked with pain as the transformation continued. She tried to focus, tried to push through the agony, but the force of the change was overwhelming. The power surged through her cells, and she felt herself slipping, losing control. The sensations were too much, her consciousness threatening to fragment. At that moment, Ryan burst into the lab, his face a mix of concern and anger. He had been trying to reach her, trying to understand, but now it was clear that she had gone too far. "Cassia!" he shouted, rushing to her side. "What are you doing? This isn't you. You're losing yourself." Cassia's eyes fluttered open, her vision swimming. She saw him, standing there, but everything around her felt like it was distorting, warping. "I'm unlocking it, Ryan," she gasped, her voice strained. "I'm unlocking humanity's potential. We can evolve. We can become. You're not just unlocking it. You're destroying yourself." Look at you, your body is breaking down. This isn't what you think it is. It's not worth it. Cassia's vision flickered again, her thoughts slipping into chaos. She could feel herself changing, her cells regenerating at an uncontrollable rate. Each cell division brought more pain, but it also brought power. She could feel her mind expanding, the visions of the future growing more vivid. I can see it, Ryan. I can see everything, humanity's future. The choice we make now. It could change everything. We can ascend, we can rule, we can survive. Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes as he grabbed her shoulders, his grip desperate. Cassia, no. I can't lose you. Not like this. But Cassia's mind was lost in the flood of visions. The future was so close, too close. She could taste it, feel it in her bones. And yet, something deep inside her was still holding on to the remnants of her humanity. Her body was changing, but at what cost? She had wanted to push humanity to new heights, to unlock the untapped potential lying dormant in every human, but now she could feel the weight of that decision. Would this change be humanity's salvation, or would it be their undoing? With everything she had left, she fought through the pain and looked Ryan in the eye, her voice barely a whisper. I can't stop, Ryan. Not now. Not after everything we've learned. But Ryan wasn't ready to give up. His voice broke as he spoke. Cassia, please, don't do this. We don't know what will happen. Cassia's body shook violently as the transformation reached its peak. The pain was unbearable, but she couldn't stop it. The genetic sequences had been unlocked, and now the power was hers. But she also knew this. Once the process was complete, she couldn't turn back. There would be no going back to the person she had been, no returning to the world she had known. Her future was now inextricably linked to the path she had chosen. The transformation raged on. She understood the gravity of her choice. The door to humanity's new evolution had been opened, and there would be no closing it. The Academy would never be the same, and neither would she. The question now wasn't whether humanity could evolve, it was whether they should. In that moment of clarity, Cassia realized the true cost of her actions. What she had unleashed could bring about a golden age, or it could plunge the world into irreversible chaos. The stakes had never been higher. The world had changed. Cassia's gamble, her desperate attempt to push humanity to new heights, had set into motion a chain of events no one could have predicted. The serum, the activation of dormant genetic sequences, had done more than just alter her body. It had rippled through every human alive, unlocking a new power, a new force within them. The future Cassia had envisioned was no longer some distant possibility. It was happening now. First, the changes were subtle. People spoke of heightened senses, strange bursts of energy, and inexplicable acts of healing. But soon, the effects became more intense. Some people began to exhibit abilities far beyond human limits, while others suffered horrifying side effects, with their bodies breaking down or their minds fracturing under the weight of newfound power. Humanity was no longer a unified species. It was fractured, each individual grappling with their own transformations, their own struggles for control. The Academy, once the pinnacle of human advancement, found itself at the heart of this upheaval. The board of directors saw the consequences of their actions and quickly realized the Pandora's box they had opened. They couldn't let it go. Too much was at stake. They needed someone to steer this chaos, someone who had experienced the change firsthand. And that someone, they decided, would be Cassia. But the offer they extended to her was far from what she had imagined. They wanted to use her as the face of a new movement, a leader who would guide humanity through its next evolutionary leap. The Academy had its own agenda now, an agenda that involved consolidating power and control over this new stage of human development. In exchange for her leadership, Cassia would become the symbol of their vision, bound to their cause and their methods. The path she had once walked, driven by the desire to uncover the truth, was now a road that could no longer be hers to walk freely. Cassia stood before the Academy's board, her mind in turmoil. She had come so far, had unlocked so much, but at what cost? The Academy's proposal was tempting. With her as the face of their movement, she could guide humanity through this chaotic new age. She could shape the future. But the more she thought about it, the more the question gnawed at her. Had she always been a pawn in this game? Had the Academy been playing a long game all along, manipulating her, using her discovery to shape humanity's evolution for their own purposes? Across the table, Ryan stood in silence. The divide between them had grown. Once, they had shared a vision, a dream of unlocking humanity's potential together. But now, their paths had diverged. Ryan no longer trusted the changes that were sweeping the world. He saw the awakening as a dangerous disruption, a force that humanity was not ready for. He had become a voice of restraint, calling for control, for measures to prevent the chaos from consuming them all. His concerns had been dismissed by the Academy, but now they had Cassia, a figure they could mold, a leader they could control. Ryan's eyes met hers, a silent plea in them. Cassia, this is not you. This is not what you wanted. We can stop this. There's still time. We don't have to let them manipulate you. But Cassia was no longer the woman she had been. She had seen too much, felt too much. The power that flowed through her veins, now the power she'd unlocked, was intoxicating. It was like a new truth, one that came with both enlightenment and destruction. She had glimpsed the future, and while it was far from certain, it was undeniable. Humanity could evolve. They could reach new heights. But could they handle the weight of that power? As she looked out the Academy's windows, she saw the world in disarray below. Cities were in chaos, governments had collapsed, and ordinary people, were struggling with the changes in their bodies and minds. Some had embraced their newfound powers, becoming something more than human, while others fought to suppress the mutations taking root in their cells. There were those who had learned to harness their abilities, and those who had been consumed by them. The world had fractured. What had once been humanity's strength, their unity, had now become their greatest weakness. Cassia's heart weighed heavy as she turned back to the Academy's board. The decision before her was not an easy one. She had dreamed of leading humanity into a new era, a golden age of strength and resilience. But that dream had blurred into something darker, something that felt beyond her control. Could she guide humanity through this? Or was she, too, doomed to be swept up in the tide of power, just like everyone else? She looked to Ryan, who still stood silent, waiting for her answer. His face was a mask of pain, a reflection of the anguish he felt at seeing her torn between two worlds. She knew what he wanted. He wanted her to stop, to put the brakes on this wild journey, to return to the world as it had been. But Cassia knew that world was gone. They were on the precipice of something new, something beyond their understanding. There was no going back. "I can't," Cassia whispered. "I can't stop it, Ryan. It's already happened." His face twisted in anguish. "You don't have to be their puppet. You don't have to let them control you." Cassia's mind raced, but in the end, she knew he was right. She didn't have to be controlled. She had the power to choose. She could either let the Academy use her as a symbol for their agenda, or she could strike out on her own. The world needed guidance, yes, but it also needed freedom, the freedom to evolve in their own way, to understand the changes on their own terms. Turning to the board, Cassia made her decision. "I won't be your puppet," she said, her voice steady but full of resolve. "I won't lead humanity into your vision. If this is humanity's future, it must be one we create ourselves. We may be fractured, we may be divided, but we will find our own path." The Academy's board was silent, their expressions a mix of surprise and frustration. Cassia had rejected their offer. They had hoped to control her, to control the future, but now it was clear the future was hers to shape. As Cassia stepped away from the table, she realized that the world had changed forever. The human race had stepped into a new age, one full of uncertainty, conflict, and potential. The question remained, would humanity rise to the challenge? Or would they destroy themselves under the weight of their own evolution? Cassia couldn't answer that. But she knew one thing: she would not let the Academy dictate the terms. Humanity's fate was in their hands now. And whatever came next, they would have to face it together, on their own terms. And as she looked out over the divided world, a question lingered in her mind. Is humanity capable of evolving into something greater, or have we simply unleashed our own downfall?